So hi, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, my dear?
I'm doing all right. I won't complain.
Well, amen to that.
Yeah, it's nice to finally get a chance to talk.
I know, likewise. Yeah. I think it's great how we're just, well, you're an alum and then I'm a current, I almost want to say student here, but a current ROC member. So, um, yeah, I just would actually love to know your experience, just, a brief overview of what you thought of the program.
Well, okay. Well, I'll start a little before. So, I went a pretty traditional path. Started studying voice in high school. I'm from Chicago, so then I went to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and then I went to Eastman School of Music at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And then I had a bit of uh, an off period where I was just, looking for programs and that kind of thing. And I landed at Lyric, however, fortunately. And it was one of the best things that could have happened.
Mhm.
I'm from Chicago, so it's really great to, be at a level house
Yeah.
and be at home for young artist program. So
Mhm.
that has just been fantastic because so many of my family and friends have been able to come see me there, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's great. How's my time in the program? It was good. I learned a lot. I gained some great mentors and musical collaborators. And yeah, I got to know what it was like to really work in an opera house, full time.
Yeah.
It was very challenging, but I was able to get a lot of roles learned and
Mhm.
um, create a really great relationship with a really great house. And so, um, and most of all, I mean, this is my thing. I'm a singer. I dedicate myself to my art, and young artist programs, they really allow young singers um, to just have a place where we can continue to cut our teeth and to really learn and develop all kinds of relationships with donors and
Yeah.
pianists and administrators and directors and conductors, all of that, um, and continue to just be artists because we need that time. So I'm really grateful and I appreciate it.
Yeah, your story actually kind of reminds me a little bit of mine. I mean, just like the Texas version. That's where.
Okay.
But like, yeah, I went to the University of North Texas for my undergraduate degree and also my graduate artist certificate. I studied with Dr. Stephen Austin there. I did a lot of roles at UNT. Had a lot of favor with the faculty, which I was very honored to have. Then I completed my time there, so a total of 6 years. Then I went to the Lyric Opera of Kansas City. So actually, this is my second time living in the Midwest. And that was a good experience there, very eye opening, because that was the first time just being out of the academic world and into the professional world, and the two are vastly different. So it was kind of a crash course of learning the ropes that way. But one good perk about Kansas City though is the food. I love the food there. That's actually where I fell in love with sushi. But anyway, small tangent. Then I found myself at the Curtis Institute of Music. And for my first year there, I continued to study with Vincent Cole. Then I switched over to Julia Faulkner, and it's been a great experience. I mean, I loved my time at Curtis. It was, I will say, the most challenging thing I've ever had to do. It challenged me in ways I did not know I needed to be challenged in, but I'm very thankful for what I learned there. It's very invaluable. And then Julia told me of an opportunity opening up at the Ryan Center. So, of course, I jumped right on that because I've been dreaming about this in particular program since undergrad. So, it feels like a surreal full circle moment. A lot of, self confirmation as well, just an artistry. So, but going to like the concert that we're getting ready to do, which I'm so privileged to be on a virtual stage with you, I think that's going to be
Likewise.
amazing. So, tell me a little bit about the repertoire that you picked.
Well, I have an aria and a different number. So at first, when I was talking to Craig, I was thinking I should do something, as for the aria. I couldn't quite put my finger on what would be most appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking something very lyrical and beautiful and all of that. And so I went through some Puccini and, you know, some other things. And then it hit me. I said, oh no, scratch all of that. And so, when I mentioned it, it was pretty much settled. I said, why don't we do To This We've Come from the console?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, there's nothing else to sing.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to sing for me. And so, yeah, the words have always gripped me, and the circumstance has always gripped me, which is a relatively young woman who is, her and her family are hunted by the secret police, and she is faced with unimaginable apathy and bureaucracy at the console, which is her and her family's only hope. And as her child dies and her husband is gone and his mother's health is waning, she begins to really break down. And To This We've Come, or the Papers aria, is when she finally goes all the way off. And so, yeah, I am glad I chose it. And then the other is I guess you would call it a hymn and a gospel mashup.
Love it, love it.
Yeah, so soprano Angela Brown, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she graduated from Oakwood, and so she came back to do an alumni performance
Nice.
while I was there. And she was able to take a very gospel standard and change the key and, you know, use her operatic voice. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm always looking for things to sing at church or, you know, non-classical things. And so when she did that, I said, oh, I could do that. And so I've been singing my tribute since then. And, you know, just kind of putting my own spin on it. And yeah. And so Craig and I have additionally put our own spin to it as well. So we start off. So we've done a little bit of a mashup between His Eyes on the Sparrow and my tribute. So it should be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm excited to hear you in that.
Yeah. What about you? What are you singing?
So when I was told that this concert was going to be focusing on, you know, Black Lives Matter and just really showcasing the African American talent from the ROC, I immediately thought to myself, well, what repertoire do I know that I can speak truly from the heart from? You know, I just kind of feel sometimes limited in a spiritual way or in a connecting way sometimes with opera, or really that's part of my journey, is to find new ways of how I can communicate. But with a topic such as this, I'm thinking it's very precious, and it needs to be clear, honest, and very authentic. So I also wanted to find a lot of relatability with it as a person who is also African American, but also is a part of the LGBT community. And since all this stuff has kind of transpired during Pride Month, I thought, actually, I know the perfect song. And a friend of mine from undergrad actually wrote a piece for me in honor of the people, of the victims from Pulse, the club shooting in Florida that happened a couple of years ago. And so what my friend did was took the text of Langston Hughes and set it to music, and it's absolutely gorgeous. He inserted a poem of his own words, my friend's own words, into the piece. So there's kind of a spoken section, kind of like a soliloquy, if you will, because that's the name of the song. It's called A Just Soliloquy. So I feel that text really captures both the, you know, wanting equality and liberation of the African American community, but also wanting to be loved and accepted regardless of skin tone, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of, you know, who you worship. Just, we are all human. And, you know, we hope that all those seeds of, you know, hate will be just obliterated, you know, just erased, because we really want to just showcase love, and love towards our neighbor, towards ourselves, and just true acceptance. So I found the music to that piece. I took it to Craig and Julia, showed them the recording of when my friend and I debuted it, and they absolutely loved it. So I was relieved. And it comes from the heart. It's been a challenge in a way because I haven't tapped into that spiritual connection in a while singing operatically. You know, I always associated that sensation, that type of communicating with praise and worship growing up as a kid. But I feel this piece enables me to call upon that inspiration, to call upon that place of genuity and just pouring outness, that I'm looking forward to showcasing that to the world, and I hope that it speaks to them.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
going back to our prompts here, so let's see. So what makes this concert different for you than any other concerts you've participated in?
What makes it different? I think it is the I'm trying to find the right word.
Mm-hmm.
The situation and the environment in which it is happening.
Yeah.
You know, going to a historically Black, you know, university.
Mm-hmm.
Much of what I've learned and much of my, at least undergrad education, was focused on African American composers, or I went to parochial school, so more spiritual content, or, you know, and it was always a lot of the performing opportunities I've had have had some justice, social social component to it.
Sure.
So in that way, it's not new to me. And even when I was at Eastman, one of my colleagues organized a beautiful concert called Jubilee with a lot of African American students. But I think now I think it's the climate, and I think it is where I am artistically and as a person. It's interesting what you were saying about how there are all of these different groups, and, you know, the intersectionality that you were speaking about, that are fighting for what I would call dignity, and a way to live their lives as they see fit without undue interference from anybody else.
Yeah.
And so as an artist, that is something that I think we strive for, and we have to fight for in this society as well. The dignity of what I call a noble profession. But not only that, you know, there's so many disenfranchised peoples, you know, and so it is for sure focusing on the African American experience. Although not a monolith, there are a lot of things we have in common, you know, but not just this African American experience, but so many different experiences, even if they don't have a name, you know, just as we go through this world, to really be fighting and living to try to have some dignity, I think is really important. And so this concert is a platform where I can take music that is very important to me and that centers this earthly experience of being denied and being met with a great deal of apathy and a lack of concern for one's humanity, and then rising above that and validating one's own self, as Magda Sorrell does in the console. She at the end, she has this glorious triumph, and she says the day will come when our hearts aflame will burn the paper chains, will burn the bureaucracy, and warn the consul, because the day when the people there, those disenfranchised people in different ways, the day will come when they will be able to have that dignity fully. And so it's a moment for me to be able to say that in all of those ways. And so to be able to sing Manati's music like that, and then to be able to sing music that not a lot of people understand, in the way of, you know, singing as a classical singer and singing these gospel idioms, is another way to just kind of reclaim that dignity and say, as I show up in this world as who I am, what I have to offer is valuable, and who I am deserves the dignity of that. So, yeah. What about you?
Love that. Well, kind of along the lines of what I was saying earlier, I just feel like it's a platform to really speak from the heart, to be very genuine, you know, to just pour out the hope for a better time and a better place where people are more accepting. And just to relay that message again, because evidently it's a message we need to hear a couple more times, you know?
For sure.
And that's just my, you know, frank response to that. So I'm grateful for this platform and to be sharing it with such accomplished African-American artists whom I look up to, you know, such as you, Larry Brownlee, Janae Bridges, Will Liverman, and then my new colleague, Leroy Davis. I think it's going to be something powerful, something very meaningful and very moving.
Yeah. And also there's this online platform, which is so new. So I've never done anything like this before. So, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I've done something similar, but not a full concert. And so that's going to be interesting as well, because the potential reach of this is pretty far and wide. And so just artistically, it is very satisfying to have an opportunity like this and to be called on to say such important things at such an important time and in such an important way. I think it's just so interesting. Have you done anything like this before?
I have not. And no, I've really not. I mean, the main performances I've been doing are pretty much staged performances, you know, like just being on a stage, whether it's a full set or whether it's a concert staged version, nothing where there's going to be actual cameras moving around and having, you know, close-ups and zoom in, zoom outs. So I'm a bit nervous, but I'm also excited because it makes me think, wow, this is what the people do on TV who I watch, you know, those artists who I look up to. You know, gospel artists back in the day, Donnie McClurkin, or some pop artists today who I look up to, Todrick Hall. You know, I think it's cool to see their end of the performance industry, how they record things. So I'm learning those skills in situations like this, and it's interesting. I like it. I like it. I guess since I have to get used to it, I might as well like it.
Now, you mentioned some of your inspirations from other places. I'm interested to know if you have any others that are particularly pushing you forward for this performance, or in general. Just what are your major inspirations to help you prepare for something like this?
Major inspirations to help me prepare for something like this. I think it would have to be my spirituality. Because I feel like the message for this year for me, and the goal is to find true authenticity, you know, in not only my personal life, but in my artistic life. And while having the stay-at-home order earlier this year, I was in Texas with my family, and it was just a time to just really start self-reflecting. You know, I mean, I had nothing else to do, and all these emotions and thoughts have just been spiraling, and, you know, a lot of disappointment because, you know, my gigs have been canceled. The rest of my school year was practically canceled, even though I was still able to graduate.
You.
But while in Texas, I was reminded of a lot of the gospel music that I've kind of have forgotten because I've been so head focused into opera and classical. The classical genre. So this was just a time to self-reflect in worship, if you can, in worship, if you will. And to remember that time when I was going around singing praise and worship and how I was connecting to many people and how they would come up to me and express their appreciation and their gratitude for singing X, Y, and Z song, to delivering such a message. And I thought, This is what I've not had with operatic singing in a while. And this is something I want to get back to, because that is a place where I feel the most free. It's the place I feel the most accepted and the most secure. And when I have all of those positive feelings, I feel that my gift and my ministry can really shine.
Yep.
And it's not that I want to go off and, preach only Christianity. No, really, my goal is to just spread around positivity, love, spiritual awareness that can just elevate someone's mood, can elevate someone's energy in the space that they are inhabiting for their neighbor next to them. So, yeah, my inspiration is my spirituality.
Awesome.
What about you?
Oh man, inspiration. There's so much. I'm inspired by a whole lot. I'm inspired by, of course, gospel music and spirituals and American music. But a lot of that comes from the Black church. And so, I just have this really great appreciation for people like, Aretha Franklin and James Brown and Marvin Gaye and all of these people. Pardon?
Luther Vandross?
You get what I'm saying? All of these people without whom, who are these pillars in American culture, but have such a similar background as I do, because it all came from the same type of church, And so, I'm very inspired when I get to have these opportunities to show the genesis of so many artists. Even classical artists like Lawrence Brownlee, like, Leona Mitchell. I was just reading about her. I said, oh, she grew up Kojic? I didn't even know.
Come on, Kojic.
And it's not to say what their spiritual beliefs are now. It doesn't even matter. But to me, it is, when you think about people like Leontine Price and Jesse Norman and Kathleen Battle, who I had the privilege to see a few years ago while I was at the ROC, the associate then, Jimmy Byrne, he put it together. And it was such a great experience to just go see her, but just to know that all of these artists, in the classical world and in the pop world, you wouldn't have a Beyonce, you wouldn't have a Demi Lovato, you wouldn't have any of these people without this one place that I don't think has gotten its full credit for how much it has inspired so much of what we call great American music. And so I think that is an inspiration for sure. And my own, I guess, wholeness and wellness journey and dedication as an artist outside of the actual singing. I think a lot of the resources, a lot of the reading, Elizabeth Gilbert, I really like a lot of what she has to say about being an artist, even though she's a writer of Eat, Pray, Love, but she has a lot of interesting ideas about artistry, and all of that thinking for me is really inspirational. So I'll say this one thing. She talks about genius in her TED Talk. I don't remember what the title of the TED Talk was, but it's about genius. It's a very popular TED Talk, but it's so interesting what she talks about, because it's like, it's what I've been saying. So she says that in other cultures, that genius was not a person, right? That the genius came to the artist, right? And that the artist was somehow a vessel or, an agent of the genius to somehow record or to embody that art. And it's so interesting because the whole time I was listening to it, I said, that's what we've been saying in Black church the whole time. and I mean, not to discredit what she was saying, but she was talking about how in Africa she was seeing how when someone was able to dance with a certain fervor, that people didn't say it was them, but that they were calling on God, saying that God had been channeled through that person to be able to express this genius. And so it is the same thing we talk about in church when we talk about the anointing or whatever. So it's just so interesting to take you know, where I've come from, and to be able to validate it, and to be able to say, no, this is not just happenstance. This is not just, you know, something that we can just kind of move over to the side. But no, there's been a specifically fertile soil in this place, this Black church experience that has birthed and a great orchard of art, and that has echoed the truth of real deep artistry and music making, and that it is that the one who is making the art is simply the vessel. So yeah, I those are, you know, I always got thoughts and stuff like that. So
but I love that.
yeah, but I'm excited. I'm excited to talk my stuff, and you know, for me, this whole authenticity is something that I understand where you're coming from, because it's so easy to be so focused on being given so much information, and then having to turn around and take responsibility for your performance in a way that feels honest to you, but also incorporates so much of what you've been taught.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that both of us have these opportunities where we can take all of our experience, both what we call high art, classical training, and we can take these more deeply spiritual experiences and bring them to an audience, and hopefully that they will be valued in a way that they couldn't be valued just one or the other, but somehow the synergy of it all, I hope, brings something even greater, more than the sum of its parts. So yeah.
Love that. Well, I look forward to sharing a virtual stage with you.
Likewise. I'm so interested to hear you sing. I don't think I've heard you, but it's so funny because your speaking voice is so melodious.
That's so sweet.
I already know you can sing, okay? You look like you can sing, and you sound like you can sing. You know, your resume, I'm sure it's impressive, but you know, I just got to go off of the meeting, you know? So I'm excited to hear you.
Likewise, the feeling's mutual.
Awesome.
Well, I wish you, I guess, a great rest of your day. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
You too.
Yeah.
Awesome.